Welcome, Jim. I'm so excited that you're here with me today.
Anna, thank you so much. I'm really honored to be on the podcast, especially knowing that I might be the first guy who's ever been on this podcast.
Yes, you're the inaugural guy.
Thank you.
Like we talked about, you're the first male guest on the SheBurns podcast. And I just really wanted to take a moment and highlight the importance of and the intent of our conversation today. Last month, when you and I first met and I heard your story, it really resonated with me. And what struck me the most is that our stories were so aligned. I'm a female, you're a male. And it was so refreshing for me as a woman to hear from a male's perspective what your experience was with burnout and the key lessons that you've learned along your journey.
It took me a while to recognize that what had happened to me, what I was experiencing was burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know who to ask for help from. I didn't see it as even a viable option. And I know from a male perspective with the cultural norms that we have, that we're not supposed to ask for help. We're supposed to be strong and stoic and in control and not have emotions. And so in a context like that, where I was like, I'm a mess and I'm afraid, and like it invited so much shame for me. And so I didn't reach out for help until a couple of years later. Biggest aha for me has actually come in the last 6 to 9 months. I came across some research by a doctor by the name of Dyke Drummond, who explains that burnout isn't a problem. And I was like, it's not a problem. Of course, it's a huge problem. And he said, no, it's not a problem because problems have solutions.
Right.
And burnout, if it had a solution, we wouldn't be dealing with it to the extent that we are. It's a dilemma. It's this complicated mix of problems that requires a customized set of strategies for each person. And when I heard that, I was like, of course, that makes total sense. And I realized in the wake of that insight, what strategies I had built over the years, because by that point I was out of burnout. And I realized like, I used strategies. I didn't use a single solution. I started trying a bunch of different things and finding what worked for me.
That makes sense. Isn't that an amazing aha when those research people kind of come out of the woodwork and you're like, you just stumble on an article and you're like, why did I not know this before? This is so life-changing, and it changes your lens.
I actually realized over time that in those communities, in those spaces with those trusted relationships, what I was building was intimacy. I was building intimate connections with so many people where I could trust them, they could trust me, we could bring whatever we had. And therefore and I have so many of them now, that all the stresses that pop up in my life, I have somewhere to take them. They don't stay inside me. I don't burn out.
So nice. I think you hit the nail on the head. We're going to talk a little bit more about intimacy when we talk a little bit about your book, but isn't it interesting how with COVID, it seemed like COVID has really shined a bright spot on burnout, right? Thousands of people were burning out. Millions of people have burned out before COVID. Like it wasn't, this unique thing that COVID brought burnout, but it's certainly uncovered and unearthed a lot more cases of burnout or people talking about it, bringing it to the forefront.
My first thought on that is stretch the timeline. I think we get so fixed on when things need to happen and the pressure starts to build up. And as a single parent who has a job, who has a social life, like there's so much going. I own a home, like all the things that you have to do. And I can get myself pretty quickly still into this notion of, I've got to do something. And if I can stretch that timeline, if I can look at when does it really need to happen, I know create space for rest. Because for me, the other thing that comes up around resiliency is I need to rest. I can't be on all the time. It's not how we're designed as creatures.
Right.
We're just not physically wired that way. So how do I create more space in my life so that I can rest and have the bounce back for what I need to do next? Indeed, and it is a huge problem. When I set out to write the book, I knew I wanted to write about a different perspective. I wanted to write it from a men's perspective because I haven't seen a lot of material out there. I mean, me being the first man on your podcast is another data point in that story that I see of like burnout is acknowledged by women. Bravo to all of you for acknowledging what's real. And for men, it isn't. And so how can I make that more accessible? How can I open up a conversation, make it relatable where guys can be like, oh yeah, what's going on for me is burnout and it's not good for me and it's not good for all the people around me.
Mhm.
And as I delved into it, I knew I wanted to write about this uncommon way that I stumbled into on my own path of intimacy, that, as I referenced before, building all of those intimate relationships, whether it's with my improv teammates or with my kids or with my partner or with my friends or with my ex-wife, like I have intimacy in all of these relationships. And it came from that emotional reckoning. It came from therapy work. It came from recovery work. But there are a lot of paths into intimacy, just as there are all these paths into burnout that are unique. Well, the strategies, the multi-pronged strategy that we need to solve a big dilemma like burnout, intimacy provides it. And that's what I realized, that I had recovered from burnout by building this intimate web of connections around me, so that I have joy in my life. I have people that I can cry in front of. I have people who support me, people who can help me work out problems.